Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the propaganda review of the Ardennes Assault single-player campaign, available from Relic on Steam at about 40 whatever currency you use, dollars, euros, beavers, borscht, I don't know. It's a 18 mission campaign offering up 3 or 4 companies depending on if you pre-ordered or afterwards by the Ranger company, also available at about 4, again, local currency unit. I think I'll stick to that. Local currency unit sounds absolutely nice and vague. And of course, I mean, basically you get these 3 to 4 companies. You get Airborne, Mechanized, Support and Ranger. Ranger being the one that is able to either pre-order or purchase depending on how you go. So roll 18 missions, 1 introductory mission, which is sort of, after having played through once, you can skip if you don't feel like going through it every time, which is quite good there. And then a series sort of initialing battles, that way sort of getting acquainted to the different companies on their own. And afterwards you'll basically let loose here on the Ardennes in a slightly more fictional way of it. It's not quite the same. For example, there'll be airborne fighting through, before things, where they really shouldn't be fighting because they're actually far away and being sent to the front. But, another detail there. There'll be air support right away for the Allies, despite, they were supposed to be held back by heavy fog and so on. So, I mean, there are some things there, of course. It's, of course, as well as they can. Your role, there's about 18 territories here. Well, not 18, close to it, anyways. Centering around here, Belgium, Luxembourg, and whatnot. All of them, as you might be noticing here, there'll be a sort of main point, and then they'll have these territories around them. These territories are basically depending on where they are, either hostile, in which case, if you move your company into it, as you might know there, you'll actually take damage. So for example, there's also a little mechanic that teaches you not to sort of linger about for too long either. It also accounts to a turn, which can also make, alter further, because, for example, occasionally, and also ranging here, you'll, for example, get an event that pops up here as you move around, which can, for example, mean, oh, hey, I get a reward from doing this. And these rewards can be different things. For example, I believe this one has it. You can also gain a specialization beyond the usual, because each company, and I'll probably should start there, starts with a specialization and some units available. Some are initially available, and then others can be gained again through battles and through these events that happen. For example, again, major specialization. Other units can then be gained through others as well. So roll that creates a sort of nice little dynamic as well, where not every battle, every campaign will be the same, because the events will not be the same. They'll not be triggered at the same place, and they can be different things. They can be units, but they can also, for example, just be small things like you lose experience, you gain experience, you gain, company strength, which is another sort of mechanic here. But it can also mean you might actually be faced with a choice. There's rumors of tigers about, but there's a shortcut. Oh, and then there might be different sorts on how things go. But back to the companies, of course, these are 3 to 4 companies. 2 sort of larger things here. You have company experience, which basically is, like we know with the units, experience sort of gained throughout the battle. You lose it as you lose entire veteran units. Of course, be careful about losing squads, but as you build it up, you gain more experience, and as you gain more experience, you will start units, for example, missions with more units, but they also, of course, have other benefits. Your units will start out veteran, the units you call in will also be veteran. So there's a slight benefit to that. Of course, the trickier thing is, it's not all missions that actually give you a lot of veteran experience, which is a bit of a problem. For example, there are some missions like this one, for example, these more engagements, generally tend to be very low in experience. So in that regard, it's more about the scenario missions themselves. If we can find one. Starblot, I believe, yes indeed. Missions like these, for example, tend to be where you gain the most of the experience, and even there, of course, you have to be careful you don't lose units. So in that regard, it's a bit here and there. And to some extent, I also feel like it works a bit against players who tend to be swift about things, stormtrooper mentality. As you then sort of, course, quickly move through things, you'll gain a lot of experience, but you might not quite gain as much as you could. So there are sort of a slight few things there as well to keep in mind as well. Another sort of metric here, of course, is company strength. Company strength is basically sort of ensuring you sort of keep it up as you lose company strength. I mean, if you deplete it, that's it, game over. This company is out of the action, so it's something you have to keep in mind. And you lose company strength as you lose squads, vehicles, and so on. So it's something you have to be careful with. There's another measure of sort of maintaining your strength. And there's a sort of little trick here, of course. You can reinforce the company, but it costs you your primary resource, which is requisition, but it also costs you experience. So, for example, you could actually risk sort of, oh dear, I've worn out, say, my mechanized company. It's veterans who won. I reinforce it. It's no longer Veterans 1, so you have to sort of balance that as well, and that sort of creates some very nice, interesting sort of meta game as well. And the fact there are several things here that creates a bit of a meta game on the meta map. Ha 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 ha. Meta, meta, meta. Of course, another factor here is, of course, requisition can be used for enforcing, but it can also be used for buying new abilities. Or, well, more specifically, reinforcing the abilities. You already start out with the abilities. In that regard, for anyone who's actually played companies online, this will be a bit familiar, because you can then sort of upgrade them in additional effects, like, for example, blind drop here, suppression, heavy machine gun to be dropped down. You can get larger scores. They can also make cheaper. All of these things can affect how these things work. And, of course, you don't have to buy every ability, you know, or every upgrade to the ability. You can sort of say, oh, well, you know, I like strafing runs. I like, you know, for it to have more, you know, strafes in it. But, you know, I don't really feel like evasive maneuvers and quick recovery is much for me. Or, you know, you can just say, I don't really feel like any of this is for me. I just want it as cheap as possible. You can do that as well. Same with the other abilities. I mean, there's nothing that says you have to fully upgrade it. It's just an option. And, of course, you can't actually upgrade every ability. You know, most of them gave, I think, 30 requisition points, of course. If you want to sort of keep every company running, that's not quite going to work out. Of course, you'll have some abilities you favour a lot, on which you end up heavily upgrading, like, for example, here, others lightly, others perhaps not so much. So in that regard, there's a bit to it here. And, of course, the different companies, of course, have their own abilities that sort of reflect them as well. Support has a lot more artillery. There's assault units. There's this more defensive ability, which is quite neat. Mechanized, of course, it's much about speed. Vehicle and infantry working together, a bit of artillery, but otherwise, you know, vehicle call-ins as well. So now some things down. Rangers, of course, have the Ranger infantry. They also have a bunch of other neat abilities. So, of course, there's a little bit of fun there as well. And again, the specializations also reflect, and they can give you completely different bonuses. Some, for example, make your support units cheaper, which can actually make a bit of a difference. So there's a bit there. And, of course, the commanders themselves also have a bit of personality. They will also be reflected, you know, in briefings. Things to see on the command there, they gave a bit of personality, a bit of history to the fight. You know, you're not just leading the companies, you have the commanders, they'll reflect, they'll say, you know, oh dear, this is better, oh F, you know, this was rather horrible. You know, you'll have, again, different personalities. We have Kurt Derby here, the veteran from World War I. He's a bit worn out, he's had enough of it, but, you know, he just wants to keep his people alive. He's, you know, from Texas, so there's a bit of a Texas drawl there. You got, you know, Bill Edwards, a daddy's boy, you know, he wants to sort of get through it. He's just got history, a lot of weighing on his shoulders, so there's a bit of fun with him. And we got Johnny Vastana, the lieutenant, who's rather thrown into things, quite unprepared for it all, and sort of supposed to try and lead out. And then we got the last one there, the Ranger commander, Monty. I'll just call him Monty anyways, but, you know, more the professional, a bit more swearing, also rather interesting stuff, and I think my personal favourite. In terms of company favourites, I think Baker Company is my favourite, followed by the Rangers. But overall, I had a lot of fun with Baker Company. It really suits my tactics and strategies. Again, you'll likely find a commander that suits you as well. Maybe you're towards Airborne, maybe you're towards Stock Support, or maybe you're towards the Ranger companies. They all sort of play into it as well. And then when you sort of then throw in all of this on that, and you add in all of these elements, it really begins interesting. Because there's also these little factors here, these little crosses, the enemy strength, which again can sort of open up for more and more bonuses for the enemy. For example, right here, you know, first one standard, then assault gunners, field snipers, veteran troops, heavy armor, fortified with bunkers, mines, and artillery support. My God! Well, here, you know, there'll be a King Tiger. I mean, all these little things, there will be, you know, part of it. And will certainly do their best to make things, well, rather miserable for you. And of course, there's even then a mechanic for that, because even if you take a territory, the enemy, of course, will try to escape, or the survivors will try and escape, and try to make towards their friends. So you can someone say, okay, it's great, I got Leonur, but there's a small gap here. Some of them might run into friendly territory, get destroyed, some of them will run to the base. There's, of course, at the beginning, you actually wanted to try a strategy of basically cutting off territories, in particular isolating the bigger ones, so they don't, you know, end up reinforcing themselves too deeply, because otherwise you're basically sort of making things tougher and tougher, and as a good strategist, you don't want that. So there's a little bit towards that as well. I mean, there's a lot there going on, and it also creates a bit more of a strategy. There's, again, a bit more of a meta game on the meta map, which, again, adds a bit more to it. A bit more replayability as well, because these enemy strengths will change from match to match. I mean, one moment it might be nothing here, and then a lot here, and so on. So it really also changes the game again. And then further we have these engagements, and again they also change. You might have one engagement one game and then another engagement the other, and they can range from basically, you know, all. It's basically, you know, as opposed to talk a bit about the campaign in part, particularly what it reminds me of, it reminds me a bit of Dawn of War Dark Crusade and a bit of Dawn of War 2. And again, you got a meta map and all that, and again it reminds me of Dark Crusade because basically Dark Crusade had the scenarios, had the skirmish missions, sort of a bit of a mix there. The engagements represent the skirmish missions, the less scripted ones. And of course, those tend to be a bit boring since, you know, there's not really much to it. Relics try to deal with that by basically giving you all sorts of random objectives throughout the battles. I mean, again, it could be all sorts of things. One mission will have you running around picking up supplies, and others will be more, you know, centered around vehicles, for example, you know, mostly also around victory points, but in some way you can affect those victory points. For example, one, you know, you have to destroy enemy vehicles, that drops the victory points. Another one, you have to kill using vehicles. So in that regard, there's a bit of this going on there. The enemy will have different strength. So it's not just a regular skirmish mission. Of course, it's not a perfect solution, but it's actually moving towards something that's reasonably fun. I mean, it's not something you can sort of really talk about, but it's got a bit of meat on it as well. And certainly, you know, a start. I mean, they could do with a bit more, you know, specific objectives rather than victory points. You know, knock out 5 specific tanks, you know, or something like that. A bit more towards, and I think would actually be pretty fun. But as a start, it's better than just, you know, a silly skirmish mission where you try to tick down victory points and so on. It's not just a grind. But of course, at the same time, they're also the missions gives you the least veterans experience, but also the ones who are basically going to suffer the less. So there's a bit there too as well. The scenario missions, of course, very much more. They're more deeply. There's a bit more scripting. There's more objectives to them. You even got bonus objectives, which for some cases can actually use some small in-game resource. Others, I'm not so sure. There might be some kind of after-game bonus, but I am not sure on that at all. But overall, that does create a lot of series of fun missions. Again, it also changes up because one mission you can play them through several times. Again, one time it might be a tank you need to knock out, another time it's an officer, and a third time you might need to save some of your own guys. So again, there's a lot of variety, and again, that's also part of one of Relic's sort of greater goals, besides, you know, making it fun, making it replayable, because you won't have the same experience ever again. I mean, it'll vary all the time. And overall, actually makes for a pretty fun thing. I mean, I've played several parts of these through several times, and I'm not exactly bored by it. It's just, you know, oh hey, this is fun. Again, this is fun. Again, in particular with Baker Company, which again is my personal favourite, it's really fun. So I mean, overall, it's actually a pretty fun campaign. It also opens up for quite a lot of replayability. Is that what you like? Ardennes Assault is a pretty good purchase already, even at maybe a steep price of 40 local units, local currency units, that is. As for the Rangers, of course, they also had quite a bit. Again, I've personally found this to be my second most fun company, and again, only 4 local currency units. They're probably also worth it if you already got it, or of course, might not bother with it. Of course, ultimately, it is you as the viewer and purchaser's own prerogative. Basically, how they work is, when you choose the 3 companies, of course, the one you don't choose, I believe, is where the Rangers make up. So, for example, if you don't choose support, they'll end up here. If you don't choose, you know, mechanized, they'll end up here, and airborne around there. So in that regard, again, it also can that way create campaigns that play out completely different. It's all of a sudden you'll have a mission then where, oh, that was easy with mechanized, but oh dear, this is tough as Rangers, and so on. So in overall, it's actually pretty fun and pretty interesting. Again, it's got some meat on it. Story-wise, of course, it's not the thickest one, but again, it's, you know, World War II strategy game. There's a bit of personality, some characters, but again, you're not like, you know, up to save the princes, bashing through the evil kraut lines or whatever, or stopping some secret doomsday weapon. Ach, it's the Uberkubelwagen. They have taken it from us. Stop them. Nothing like that. I mean, it's all, again, a slightly fictionalized, but again, it's, you know, a military campaign, and it's good for it. It doesn't try to sort of add any needless or senseless plot to it. Just get in there, beat some head-ins, win. And all of, again, trying to create a semblance. Again, you're fighting against a foe, organized with plans, strategies, command structures of his own, and it generally works for the larger part. Again, engagements, it sort of slightly, again, has a bit of trouble keeping it up. So there's sort of, you know, small sort of things that sort of suit me out. Again, is, you know, some missions, for example, the scenarios, all enemy Panzer IV, for example, are the one from the Wehrmacht, the better ones. On the other hand, engagement is the Panzer IV Model J. You know, it's a bit inconsistent. It's a bit inconsistent, in particular since the Panzer IV Model J would have been the most common one at that part of the war. Just saying. But again, it's a campaign full of surprises and a large sort of set of units. They, you know, sort of slightly new units. I think the 223 with a bed frame radio sort of on it, and even an Oberkommando West motor half-track makes an appearance. So overall, it's a pretty fun campaign. I mean, I quite enjoyed it. And there's even a little reward for you at the end of it. And you might say, oh, what's that? Because as you complete it, you get a bit of this. Besides, you know, the three gentlemen again get Monty Durante. But you get bulletins. You can get some skins here for your tanks. Even some faceplates if you want, but overall some unique bulletins, unique skins for each of the companies, which again will add a bit to your battle, a bit to your action, and give you a bit something afterwards to play with in skirmish and multiplayer. I mean, they not really made a big deal of course. It might be feeling a bit off. They sort of tried to sell a single player campaign on skins and bulletins, but overall it does add a bit for those that want it, and I believe they are unique. They are classified as rewards, and that of course also creates an incentive, of course, to play it through several times, because as you get better medals you also get more goodies, but also of course depending on the company's play, of course you can then sort of get different bonuses. For example, I've got the Ranger, Mechanized and Airborne, but for example I don't have support yet, so that gives me an incentive to also play through with support. So in that regard, you know, it's overall a pretty good campaign, pretty solid content, really good. Definitely leagues ahead of the original Companies 2 campaign. Definitely ranking up there as some of the better Relic campaigns there ever made so far. Anyways, and again, I quite enjoyed it. And again, whether it's worth those 40 local currency units, that's ultimately something you have to ask yourself. Of course, if you're just going to play through it one time, no chance in hell it's going to be worth it. If only you might have a chance of playing through several times, enjoying yourself, going, oh, I'm having a lot of fun. Bingo. Then it might probably be something for you. On the other hand, if you just say, you know, I don't have the money, whatever, you know, I don't begrudge you. I mean, it is a bit of a steep price again for such content. And I mean, ultimately, you know, that might not be necessary. It could be a good thing to wait you there for it. Though you might slightly miss out, but again, not terribly a lot. But again, you know, overall it's a good package. And I'd also say the Ranger Company is definitely worth it for me. At least it added some good fun and allowed me to again play me a bit further towards my play style. And overall, it was a fun company to play with. So in that regard, overall, a pretty good deal, pretty good fun. And again, easily recommendable, but again, you know, depending on the price tag, of course, and you're intended to use it, of course, you know, that question, the answer might be different from person to person. But certainly overall, I sort of feel, you know, sketch it out. And again, at the end, there's a slight reward even for those who play multiplayer, like me, for example, although I do also quite enjoy single player. I mean, you know, there's some extra goodies there for the Americans. And overall, in the end, I mean, I suppose the highest praise I could give this is, I really want to play this type of campaign as the Germans now. Come on, Relic, you said you'd do it if there was enough support for it. Give it to us. And that's really sort of the biggest thumbs up and give it. Give me this as the Germans. Let me play through the Ardennes as the Germans and beat those silly allies. Silly. So, there you go. Hopefully that should clear up some people's answers, questions, thoughts, and overall incentivize them maybe towards getting. Otherwise, you know, that's fair enough. So anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned some things, so it gave you an idea of the Ardennes Assault campaign, if it's something you'd like to play with or not, or at least wait to get. Either way, hope it was of use, and hope it was good overall. So thank you all, and see you.